Hi, and welcome back to the Public Gardens Training Series. This is Lesson 7. Today we're going to learn how to get the GPS data that we collected out in the field off of our mobile device and back into the Public Gardens data model. As in our previous lessons, you'll need a Windows XP computer, or better, running the Arc Editor or Arc Info license level of Esri's ArcGIS desktop software, version 9 or 10. Alright, let's get started.
To get started with today's lesson, let's go ahead and open our web browser and go to the Alliance for Public Gardens GIS website at www.apgg.org. And when you get there, go to the training section and go to our video series and scroll down to the bottom. And we're going to download lesson7.zip. And we can go ahead and save that to our downloads folder. And when it's all done, I'm going to go ahead and open the file. And depending on your file compression software, you may have to do this in a slightly different way. I have WinZip installed on my computer, so I should just be able to click on it and it'll open up WinZip. And I'm going to go ahead and click unzip, and I'm going to do unzip to a selected folder. And I'm going to go to the location where we've been saving all of our data. That's our UC Davis Arboretum folder, and hit unzip. And it's going to ask if we want to replace some information here. This particular download includes the data from Lesson 4 as well as the new data for Lesson 7. So I'm going to go ahead and overwrite the data from Lesson 4. If you haven't done Lesson 4 or don't have the file still on your computer, you won't see this, but just go ahead and hit yes to all if it asks you to overwrite. And when it's all done, it'll bring up a window showing the results. And now you'll see that we have our Lesson 7 folder here. And what we're going to do on this one, because we're going to be checking data back in from the work that we did out in the field collecting data, we're going to go back to our Lesson 4 folder and open up our Lesson 4 MXD. You can go into the folder and open that, or alternatively, you can open ArcMap up by going to the Start menu, going to ArcGIS, going to ArcMap 10, or whatever version that you have installed on your computer. And it should bring up this Getting Started window here for you, and you can either open the Lesson 4 from the recent files, or you can browse for more and browse to that folder where you've saved your data and open up Lesson 4. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up. And the reason that we're opening this up is because we checked out the data from this Lesson 4 map document, so we want to check it back into the same one. So once things get loaded up, you'll see the familiar aerial photography for the East Asian section of the UC Davis Arboretum, and it looks pretty much the same. We don't, at this point, don't see any of the new features that we mapped out in the field. So now what we want to do is go ahead and check those in. So to do that, we're going to use the ArcPad Data Manager toolbar. Now, if you don't see this, you can open it by going to the Customize menu, going to Toolbars, and selecting ArcPad Data Manager. And another thing you might want to check is that you have the ArcPad Data Manager extension turned on. To do that, go to the Customize menu, go to Extensions, and make sure that the ArcPad Data Manager extension is turned on and checked. Hit close on that. And then once it is, you should see all the buttons should be available on the ArcPad Data Manager toolbar. And what we're going to do is go ahead and get data from ArcPad. So we'll click on that, and it brings up this window for Get Data from ArcPad. And what we're going to do with this is select the file that came from our mobile device. So with the Lesson 7 download, we already have that data copied to our computers. Now, if you did Lesson 5 and Lesson 6 out in the field and followed along, you'll want to connect your mobile device to your computer and go to the My Documents folder on it and copy that folder that should be the East Asian section checkout back to your Lesson 7 folder. and replace what's there. Otherwise, you can just go ahead and hit this little icon with the green plus on it, and let us select a file, and we'll go to our UC Davis Arboretum folder, go to Lesson 7, and go to our East Asian section checkout, and select the only file that's in there, and hit open. Alternatively, when you have your mobile device connected, you can navigate to that device through My Computer and go to the My Documents folder and just select the file directly from your mobile device if you'd like. Now once the file is selected, you'll see that we've got our checkout name here listed at the top, and then at the bottom it says that we have the Plant Center feature class and the Mass Planting feature class, and each of them have 2 features added, so we're going to want to check those in. So I'm going to go ahead and select all, so it'll check in both Plant Center and Mass Planting, and do check in. And it says here that because we're not in an edit session, we won't be able to undo our check-in. In this case, we're going to go ahead and hit yes. But if you want to have that ability to undo your check-in, then you'll want to select Start Editing from the Edit menu or the Editor toolbar before you perform this process. But this is okay. We're not going to undo our edits, so we'll go ahead and hit yes. And once it's done checking the data in, it gives us a little report, and it says that everything is checked in fine. And we'll go ahead and hit OK. And now you'll see that it no longer has any edits to check in. Everything has been added, so these now say 0. So we'll go ahead and close this window. And now on our map, we'll see that there's some data available. So let's go ahead and grab the zoom in tool and click and drag a rectangle around the area we're interested in and zoom in. And you'll see that we have 2 mass planting features, which are the green or lighter green polygons, and then 2 plant center features, which are the green dots. Now what we're going to do in this post-processing step is basically go through and make sure that what we collected in the field is in good shape, add some extra attribute information to it, and make things a little bit more presentable for making a final collection map. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and from the Editor toolbar, which if you don't have it open, you can get by clicking on this Editor toolbar button here, and that'll bring up the toolbar. Alternatively, you can go to Customize Toolbars Editor and turn that on. I already have it added, so I'm going to go down to my toolbar and click Start Editing from the Editor menu. And that'll bring our Create Features palette on the side. Now, we're not going to create any new features, so we're going to pretty much just ignore that for the moment. But I'm going to scroll over just a little bit so our data fits on the screen. And what I want to do is grab the Edit Features tool, or Edit tool, from the Editor toolbar. And we're going to start with this mass planting down in the lower left and click on it. And we want to look at the attributes for it. So let's go ahead and open the attributes window. To do that, on the Editor toolbar, towards the right side of it, you'll see a button for attributes. You can click on that and it'll bring up the attribute window. Now this is taking up a lot of real estate on my screen, so I'm going to click the little pin icon here on the Create Features palette and hide that. And now we'll see all the attributes that we entered out in the field for this particular feature. We'll see that we've assigned a mass planting ID of 1. We've said that there's only one type of plant species growing in here. That's great. We didn't fill in a name out in the field, and the reason for that is because since the field data collection videos were created, we've made some changes to the data model. We've added some new fields and kind of reorganized the way that things work. So as we go through some of these attributes, I'll try to point out some of those changes for us. We'll see that our planting size has been filled in small, 6 to 20 specimens. That's great. And we'll see our section name and collection name are set to East Asian section. Now, if you had performed lesson 4, there was a critical step that we didn't perform in that step or in that lesson, and that was adding drop-down values to the section name and collection name domains. Now, we've gone ahead and done this for lesson 7. But if you would like to do that, you can look up in the ArcGIS help about creating domains from tables. And in the lesson 4 data, there are domains, domain lists that you can add to these. So right now, so we've gone ahead and done that, and you'll see that when I click on this, it gives us a drop-down list that we can select values from, and that's all great. And so our East Asian collection and section names are filled in. Our survey date is filled in. Myself, the username is also filled in, and this is another domain that we didn't work with. And let me just show you really quick. If you wanted to make changes to the domains for these drop-downs, what we've done is in the data model is we've tried to name the domains the same as the field name. So section name is the name of the section name domain, collection name. In the case of username, we use that multiple times, so we just called that username. So if we wanted to make changes to that, we would go open our catalog window here. If you don't have that open, you can do that from up here. You can open the catalog window. And in catalog window, if we go to our home geodatabase, which is right now it's in lesson 4, and we went and we got properties, we right-clicked on the geodatabase itself and select properties. It brings up this database properties window, which has a general tab and a domain tab. And on the domain tab, you'll find a list of all the domains that are built into the data model. And these essentially equate to the drop-down lists that are available when we're working with attribute data. So if I wanted to go down to the section name domain, they're in alphabetical order. We'll see section name here, and we can see the values that are on that are included with the data model by default. Now, because we don't know what the different sections of your garden are named, we haven't filled all these in. But if we wanted to add some values to it, we could go ahead and type those in. So I could type in East Asian and hit apply, and then that change will be saved. And when I go to work with that drop-down list for the section name field, that value will come up. Similarly, we can scroll up to collection name and do the same thing. Can type in East Asian. In the UC Davis Arboretum, we have a East Asian section, and we also have an East Asian collection of plants that are from East Asia. We'll hit apply, and that's in there. And then additionally, we can go down to the username domain, and we can add usernames in there. So I'm going to add my name. And the reason that I'm adding the same value on both sides is that you can represent data with a code value that when you type in that code, should display the full name for you. Now, if you ever try to export your data out of ArcGIS, all you'll see are those code values. So to prevent that from happening, we type in the full value on both sides, and that way when you export your data and try to share it with someone else, they'll see the same thing that you do. So we'll hit apply, and you could go ahead and add as many names to this list as you want for all the people who will possibly be using the GIS at your garden. Other things that we did that we didn't cover in lesson 4 is that we added the accession number and scientific name domains. Now, scientific name is right here, and you'll see that this is currently blank. If we wanted to populate this, I'll go ahead and show you how to do that now. We'll go ahead and close this window, and we'll open up the Arc Toolbox window here. And it didn't do anything, so we'll open up the Arc Toolbox tab here and go to Data Management Tools, and you'll see there's a toolbox for domains. And what we can do is convert a table to domain. Now, what we did ahead of time for this lesson, and should have done in lesson 4, is created a predefined list of values that you can use to import to this. Now, we can go ahead and take a look at that. If we go to explore our computer here, and we go to the Documents folder, go to UC Davis Arboretum, go to lesson 4, you'll see that there's these scientific name.txt and source accession number.txt. If we double click on the scientific name list, you'll see that we have just a simple list of all the scientific names for this part of the garden, our East Asian section. And it starts out with a header that says what this is, its scientific name, and then a list of, in alphabetical order, of all the scientific names for the garden, or this part of the garden. And similarly, we've done this for our accession numbers. And there you go, it says source accession number and a list of our accession numbers. Now what we can do in ArcGIS, if we go back to it, is simply run this table to domain tool and turn that list into a domain that will serve as drop-down values for us. So if we select the input table in this tool and we go to our lesson 4 folder, we'll select scientific name, click add, and then for the code fields, we will select scientific name because that's the header in that file. And then the input workspace, we should select our, from our lesson 4 folder, we should select our UC Davis Arboretum geodatabase and hit add. So that means we're going to add this domain to that geodatabase. And then it automatically knows that we're going to be using the scientific name domain and already has a description on that. We can just append our new values to this list and hit OK. And it says that right now that we're editing, so it can't do anything. So what we'll do is we'll stop editing and run the tool again. And this time it should create that domain for us. And we'll have to wait a little bit of time, and once the tool is done running, it'll give us a little notification that it either succeeded or failed. And you can see that it's running by this little scrolling status bar down at the bottom. And when it's all done, it gives us a little green check mark, says we're good to go. So now we can verify that worked by going into the catalog window here, getting the properties on our geodatabase, and going down to our scientific name domain. And now we'll see that that list of values has been added to both the code and description side of this domain. And when we start editing, we can select our mass planting, or our, we'll work with our plant center, that's what we'll see our scientific name. But if we get the attributes on this, those changes that we made to the section and collection name domains now show up in these drop-down lists where they didn't before. And same with the username, there's my name in that list. So not too difficult to create these drop-down lists, a few steps involved, but it makes your data collection a lot simpler so that when you're out in the field and working with this data, instead of having to type in a lengthy scientific name, you can just select it from a list. Now, one word of caution on that is that you want to try to keep those lists as short as possible. Your mobile devices have limited memory and limited screen real estate, so it can be a little tricky to display long lists on there. So, and the device may choke on very long lists. So it's good to keep those lists short. That's why we limited it to just this part of the garden in this case. And then when you moved on to working with another part of the garden, you could either replace that domain or just update it and add additional values to it. But replacing it is probably the way to go. Okay, so back to where we left off. So now that we've got our drop-down list populated, we can go through here and verify our attributes. So I'm going to make some changes to this mass planting. So I'm going to fill in the update date because now I'm changing the data. So I'm going to set the update date as today, and I'm the person making the changes. So I'm going to select my name from the drop-down list because I added it to that username domain. And that's all I'm going to do. That's all the attributes that are available for this mass planting. So now that we're done with that, I'd like to make this mass planting look a little bit smoother. We just collected the vertices of this mass planting while we were out in the field. And if I double click on those, you can essentially see the 3 points that we collected GPS data for. Now, a group of plants is traditionally going to be more well-rounded, if you will. We'll have some curves to it, not be straight lines like this. So I'm going to try to make this look a little bit nicer by smoothing it out. So to do that, I'm going to go to the Customize menu, go to Toolbars, and make sure that the Advanced Editing toolbar is turned on. And that Advanced Editing toolbar is down here at the bottom of the screen for me where I've docked it. And when I select this feature, you'll see that these advanced editing buttons become available. And on the far right of the toolbar, we're going to want to hit the smooth button here. And what this will do is it'll smooth it out. And now it asks us for the maximum allowable offset. This is essentially how much the program can move the edges of this data for you. Now, our GPS that we were working with has an accuracy, between 6 inches and a foot at best. So I'm going to go with 6 inches or half a foot. Now, the units for our geodatabase that we set in, I believe, lesson 1 or 2, based on the coordinate system, are in feet. So I'm going to go ahead and put in 0.5. That'll be half a foot, and hit OK. And you'll see it'll move the edges of that polygon feature out just a little bit and round the corners off. And it makes it look a lot nicer and will look a lot better on our final collection map. So that's great. So now we'll go ahead and move on and take a look at the plant center that's associated with this mass planting. So we'll click on that, and brings up the attributes here on the side. Now, another one of the changes that we've made to the data model since we filmed our data collection videos is that we've changed the format of the plant center ID. What we've done with this is we've made the plant center ID to be a unique number based on a combination of the accession number and the qualifier. And this is common to botanical garden database software like BGBase, where each plant that is a member of a particular accession or has the same accession number is generally given a qualifier that makes it unique inside of that accession. So if you had 5 plants with this same accession number, they may be numbered 1 through 5. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in a qualifier for this one. I happen to know that it is number 1. And then our plant center ID then becomes a new value, not the number 1 that we entered in the previous videos, but it actually should be the accession number plus the qualifier, and usually with some kind of separation. You can do -1, .1, whatever works for you. I'm going to do .1, and now this plant center ID is now a unique number for each plant in our collection. And then this will works with other parts of the data model. So go ahead and make sure you change that plant center ID value from the one that we entered in the field to a combination of the accession number and qualifier. Okay, as we're moving along, we'll see another new field that wasn't available while we were doing data collection. That's called plant center type. And what we've done with data models, we've changed it so that a plant center point can either be a mass planting point or an individual called a plant center, or it could be unknown. Now, if you're mapping individual plants, you'd want to use plant center. If you're mapping a group of plants and you're trying to record each species within that mass planting or group of plants, then you use mass planting. So we've got that preset up here. Our plant habit is set in from what we recorded in the field, and that's great. I could fill in family and genus information if we'd like, and that genus and species and other information can actually come from the scientific name. So this happens to be a Hemerocallis lady scarlet. So for the genus, I can type in Hemerocallis. And you can choose to leave these fields blank if you want and just stick with the scientific name field, but it's nice to be able to easily search your data for a particular genus, species, cultivar name, etc. Now there's no species associated with this, so we'll leave that blank. And the cultivar name we're going to fill in as Lady Scarlet. But notice that in the scientific name, cultivars generally have single quotes around the cultivar name. I choose to leave those out. You can put those in if you want, but it makes your data a little bit easier to search if you don't have those quotes in there. So we'll leave those out for now. There's no trade name or description associated with this plant, so we'll leave it blank. Another new addition to the data model is this abbreviated name field. If you'd like to have the names on your map be abbreviated, some scientific names are very long, you could choose to put that in there. Such as H. Lady Scarlet or whatever abbreviations you want to use in your garden. I'm going to leave that blank for now. There's also a primary common name field. If you want to fill in a common name for this plant, you can do that. Another change is that our status field has been changed to plant condition. And I believe that we looked at that while we were out in the doing data collection, and we recorded that this plant is being alive. That's great. But there's a drop down here, and you can actually put in a more detailed condition assessment of this plant if you'd like. Our plant size is 0, and that's because this plant is part of a mass, and the actual size of the mass has been recorded here with the polygons. So we leave all mass plantings with a plant size of 0. And our units are inches. That's great. Our section name and collection name are filled in. If we had a grid system in our garden and it was in a particular grid cell, we could fill that in. If you want to fill in latitude and longitude values, there are numerous ways to do that, and we can cover one of those at the end. It's best to do all those calculations all at once, so later in this video we'll cover that. If you know the date that this plant went in the ground, you can fill that in. The date that we surveyed it, that's filled in. The name of the surveyor is filled in, and since we've made some changes to it, I'm going to fill in the update date as being today. And I'm going to fill in my username here. And if this plant happens to die or is removed from the collection, you can put in an end date for it. So if a plant does die or is removed, you'd want to change the plant condition here. Where is that? Here it is, plant condition, to dead or removed. And then you can set up what's called the definition query to hide those features from your map. And in that case, you're not throwing away any data. You'll save that data. It's just hidden. And if that plant ever comes back, you can change the condition back to alive or whatever condition it's in, and that plant will then reappear on your maps. So if you do have a plant that is dead or removed, you can put in an end date for it. And this is handy because then you can use the plant date and the end date to do some change over time animations in ArcGIS, which are really handy. You can actually see how the garden changes over the years. So that's really neat. So our collection ID, we're not dealing with that today. We'll leave that blank. But we do have a mass planting ID of 1 set in here, and that links this mass planting with the plant center. And to see that link in action, under Plant Center here, we'll see here's our Lady Scarlet that's in there. And if we click the plus icon next to it, we'll see mass planting. These are all the different feature classes in the data model that are related to Plant Center. And under mass planting, we'll see 1 here. If we click on that, we'll see that it's highlighted and that those 2 features are actually connected together. So that's great. And that's all we're going to do on that particular one, so we're good there. So the next thing we'll do is go ahead and take a look at this other mass planting that we collected with our laser rangefinder. And we're going to go through much of the same process here. With this guy, we're going to make sure that our mass planting ID is filled in correctly. That is. Our mass planting type is filled in. If we wanted to assign a name to this mass, you can go ahead and do that. A planting size is filled in, section name and collection name, survey date, username, all filled in. That's great. We're going to make some changes to the data. We're going to smooth it out, so I'm making an update. So I'm going to set the update date to today and the username to my name. And that's it. And then we can select this guy again and run our smooth tool here. Put in our offset of 6 inches. OK, it rounds that feature out for us, and then we're all done with the mass. Let's go ahead and take a look at this plant center. We'll click on this guy, and this guy has an accession number of unknown, so that's interesting. So now I could go through and now that I'm back in the office, go through my planting records and find an accession number for this guy. Alternatively, you could assign an accession number to it and accession it if you'd like to. Now, you'll see from this drop-down list here that we don't have any accession numbers available, and that's because we didn't add our accession number table to our domain. So we can go ahead and do that. So we'll stop editing, save our edits, go to the Arc Toolbox tab here, or open it from right here. Do table to domain and hit the browse button, select our source accession number drop down our table, Select source succession number for the code field and the same for the description field. Remember, we're putting the same values on both sides there. Select our input workspace as our geodatabase. All the other information is filled in properly. We hit OK. It's running down here at the bottom. It's all done. Gives us the green check mark. That's great. And now we can start editing again. Select our plant center and open our attributes window. We'll hide our create features palette. And now when we go to source accession number, there's our list of accession number values available to us. So I happen to know that this guy is a MO2.0446. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And I happen to know that this is the third plant in that accession. And then I'm going to change our plant center ID to M02.0446.3. Our plant center type is set appropriately because this plant center is part of a mass planting. Our habit is set correctly. That's great. And then I'm going to fill in our genus field from the scientific name. And that is Hemero. Oops. Callus, and our cultivar name is Miss Tinkerbell, which we could verify by doing a little rollover here. It doesn't have a trade name or description. We'll leave our abbreviated name and primary common name blank for now. Our plant condition set to alive. Our plant size is set to 0 because this is a mass planting and its size is already defined by the polygon. Our section and collection names are filled in. And we don't know the planting date of this at the moment, but we are making changes to it, so I'm going to go ahead and set the update date to today and the username to my name. We don't have an end date because it's still live. And one thing we'll see here is that the mass planting ID is missing on this guy. So to link this plant center with the mass planting ID, we'll need to type in the appropriate ID. Now, if you remember, the mass planting ID is 2 on this guy, but if we use the identify tool, we can quickly check to see that the mass planting ID is 2. And then we can simply type in 2 here, press enter. And now, if we hit the plus icon here, we'll see that these guys are in fact linked together. And that's all we're going to do to make changes to this guy. So I can go ahead and save my edits, and we're good to go.
Okay, so that concludes Lesson 7 in our Public Gardens GIS training series. So today we learned how to post-process the GPS data we collected in the field using the ArcGIS Public Gardens data model. Now that we've learned how to create, collect, and edit GIS data, you can begin to create accurate collection maps for your garden. To learn more how to do this, I recommend checking out Esri's online course titled Cartographic Design Using ArcGIS. I hope that this training series has helped you learn the process of creating an accurate GIS for your garden, and I encourage you to share your questions and experiences with the rest of the Alliance for Public Gardens GIS community at apgg.org. Thanks for watching and good luck!